Hi, Misha here, and thought might as well kind of complete the modern Molot RPK series. Long ago in the past, we checked out the VEPR 1V, which I think was actually supposed to be VEPR Roman numeral 4 as in IV. That was a 223 5.56 NATO caliber semi-auto companion to the RPK 201, and in more recent times we've looked at the FM-RPK74, which is a semi-automatic version of the RPK74M. And so with that, we might as well check out the modern RPK in 7.62 by 39 Soviet M43, also known as the RPKM or RPK 203. So, much like with the last video, we have an offering from FIME group here in the VEPR line, known as the VEPR FM-RPK47-33. It's going to have essentially the same feature set as the 545 version. We'll get it out of the box in just a minute. Comes in the same grease paper, typical Molot box. One thing that I wasn't necessarily expecting, but I thought was nice of them, they did include a brand new 30 round Circle 10 waffle mag. Hey, it's not Russian, but it's very close and one of the best mags available. And we have our typical brand new Russian cleaning kit tube with a few tools in it. And we have the usual plastic envelope with manual, card, and all that good stuff. And that is, ladies and gents, what you get. And I may brush over some stuff in this video because I just recently covered the 545 companion, and we've covered it quite a bit in the past. But with that said, let's get this out of the box and we'll do a bit of comparing and just a bit of talking. So here we are out of its box with the factory mag provided. And for comparison, I brought out my Russian RPK S, also in 7.62 by 39, but a mite older, with a 1972 or 1, I can't remember, dated trunnion. Now, guns like this RPKS were just about the only options available for years here in America if someone wanted a Russian RPK. Parts kits have come in small dibs and dabs, like this one, and were built by, well, various builders. That's what builders tend to do. And this one was assembled by Legion USA. Pretty neat company. They were staffed by former Izmash, and Molot employees. And they had a pipeline to bring in some pretty nice condition kits, of course, because of rules. Sans receiver, so these were built on Nodak receivers. And with US barrels, this is a chrome line barrel, but it is Green Mountain. It's about the only barrel option, unfortunately. Bulgarian barrels are different. What's a little unique about this build is it is the S, it is the side folder. And I brought it out to kind of show. It has what appears to be a standard clubfoot stock, and you'll see this hole here. Well, really, to fold it, you stick a bullet tip in that hole. The early style, and I'll flip these over in a bit, were a little different. The catch on the side really did not function so much as a stock release, as more just a latch. You unfold it very easily by just reaching in as normal. But to fold it, like I said, you'll need a tool, like a bullet tip. And this was to make sure this would not fold up accidentally in the battlefield. The RPKS was a very specialist weapon designed for paratroops as well as some vehicle operators, keeping in mind this was a light machine gun, Kalashnikov, handheld machine gun. I've gone into pretty considerable detail in other videos about the RPK history. Real brief, it was developed, the need was clear by the mid-50s when the AK-47, AK Type 3 was in service. The Russia was using the DP as well as the RPD, but the RPD really wasn't the best light machine gun. The 7.6239 cartridge really didn't operate a belt very effectively. So basically, when they went to the stamped receiver AKM at Izhevsk, nominally under the design team of Mikhail Kalashnikov, they made a larger, beefier version of the new AKM, first seen right after, known as the RPK. As I said, Kalashnikov handheld machine gun, aka light machine gun. Now, the idea behind the RPK was not to give essentially better accuracy, although it was to extend the range a wee bit, but basically it was just meant for more sustained fire. The original AK, of course, is a rifle first and foremost, ergo being used as a semi-auto for the most part, with full auto as an emergency or oh shit type situation. But the RPK was designed where it could fire full auto and was intended to. To that end, they went to a longer 23¼ inch barrel, so quite a bit. It was also heavier. They gave it a new windage adjustable rear sight. Early versions would use pretty much a standard top cover, but soon they would go to a thicker, smooth top cover. They would also go to a reinforced, heavier duty stamped receiver, 1.5mm versus 1.0. They would bulge the front trunnion. This not only allowed for a heavier trunnion here, but of course it needed that for the thicker barrel interface. They would go to a more heavy-duty recoil spring with a machined guide rod, unlike the wire type found in the AKM. Heavy-duty front wood handguard. They would use a very similar stock to the RPD, this clubfoot. Still had a storage compartment in the back. And of course, most noticeably to a lot of people, the folding light bipod. The RPK would feed from standard drums and box mags. Yes, that's the dishwasher. I don't know. My wife started it when I told her I was going to be doing videos, but she did, so I'm sure someone's already commented. But anyway, it uses the same magazine types as the AKM, AK-47, but they also made 75 round drums for it, top loading, as well as extended 40 round box magazines. Originally the mags would be made from steel. Later in 1968 they would go to this so-called Bakelite pattern. Typically they would issue one drum and 4 40 round mags with an RPK. Well, this was developed at Izhevsk Manufacturing was actually transferred to what we know today as Molot in 1960 because the HIS was so busy. And then Molot would turn out its first rifles in 1961. It would pretty much become known as the RPK manufacturer. And the RPK would be pretty much issued one per squad and become very famous. By 1964, it was seen more and more widespread in the Soviet Red Army, and after that it would start being exported to friendly nations and even manufactured in a few, such as the PM-64 LMG in Romania, which you might be familiar with because we have a semi-auto version known as the AES-10B. Well, as the RPK-74 came into fruition and the RPK-74M, more modernized versions, which you can check out our earlier videos on, in the 1990s, Molot expanded the production line to include other versions for export customers. The so-called RPK-201, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, was chambered for 5.56 NATO 223 Remington. And the only user of note I could find for this was the military, the army of the nation of Fiji. And we have received a semi-auto version as the VEPR 1V, but for the most part, not a lot of takers. Likewise, they did a 7.6239 modernized version, known as the RPK-M, and it's also referred to as the RPK-203. And it has the same features as the RPK-74M. The side-folding stock was made standard. This time it can be folded and unfolded with pushing of the latch. You didn't have to use a, where am I at here, guys? A bullet tip is on the original RPKS. They also made the scope rail standard, which before was an option, hence the cutout in the stock for it. And of course they went to newer black polymer furniture, reinforced fiberglass stuff. The other differences are pretty minor. The front sight is slightly simplified versus the original. Likewise, the bipod, or rather its collar, this is original style, is the more expanded style to give more rotation. You'll notice we have the dimple pressed hardware, the ring, and the gas block here. Notice that the retaining ring is in the front here. Well, originally all the hardware is on the AKM, was just pinned on, and for some reason the retaining ring for the cleaning rod is towards the back of the gas block. Don't ask me why they made that change, but they did. They also went to a few different things, like they went to a stamped latch up here for the gas tube versus being machined. They also went from the smooth topped takedown button to the kind of ribbed top. By the way, the smooth side receiver is correct. The reason this is the dimpled receiver is because it's a Nodak spud. Now it's true that earlier Soviet RPKs would have still had a magwell dimple, but by the early 70s this is probably not correct. But US receiver, and again with RPK builds, you don't have a lot of options. The bolt carrier, specifically the charging handle, is a little more squared off versus here, where it's more rounded. It's more interesting, whereas on the newer AK-74M types, they have long since gone to a cast bolt carrier since the late 70s in Russia. With the RPKs from Molot, the carriers have remained machined, as with the guy rod. The idea was still these were meant to be light machine guns, so they didn't use very many cast or even stamped parts. Now this model, the FM-RPK47-33, comes with a standard muzzle nut on 14x1 left-hand threads. Most of your RPK 203s will have a birdcage flash hider, identical to that seen on the RPK 74M, but of course a larger opening for the 30 caliber projectile versus the 22 caliber. The newer guns, of course, will accept any standard mags. However, they didn't really make drums for them, but they do make a modern fiber glass reinforced black polymer 40 rounder. So that seems to be the highest capacity modern magazine for this type. Flipping these a bit for some final thoughts. You can see the latch here, how it's just a latch. Here's also the kind of unique Molot pistol grip. It uses concave checkering, kind of like you see in a lot of the Romanian guns. Notice this stock isn't cut out for the side rail, because this was an RPKS. There was an RPKSN, which would have had both the rail and the stock with the wood, but this seems to be a very minor subvariant because both were pretty minor production options. In fact, neither were made in large numbers. This really is a neat build. Like I said, Legion USA did it. They only did maybe a dozen of these because the kits are just not common. The only real difference, of course, is the rear, the stock, also the latch. But this rear trunnion is pretty uncommon. One nice thing, the stock is separable with one screw on top and two on bottom of a tang. So if you had one of these and then they wanted to install a more modern stock later, no problem. The numbers on this do match for what it's worth, but it is a US barrel and US receiver. And this was kind of our only option, the closest we could get for a 7.6239, a Russian RPK. The next best option was the Romanian AES-10B, which is a near exact clone and a true import, but isn't Russian, of course. So with that said, the VEPR FM-47-33 is really the only option if you really have to have true blue Russian. These are 100% made by Molot, and they were going to be released to the wide market the summer, August really, of 2017, but then the sanctions came down and put an end to that and other projects. Unfortunate, but there it is. Some have questioned because these have been seen more frequently at the beginning of 2020 if the sanctions have been lifted or if they found a workaround. Unfortunately, no. In the way the sanctions are worded, there really isn't going to be a workaround. What it is FIME Group just held on to some of these to the end so they would have something interesting to show at SHOT Show. Can't blame them. You need something. They come in with a thumbhole stock as sporter rifles. Of course, they will take the thumbhole off. They will install the requisite number of U.S. parts. In this, they happen to be the U.S. pistol grip, which is a standard arsenal type. The fire control group is American, but what's kind of neat, it's copied off the Molot style by FIME, and is actually a really nice trigger group. Feels pretty good, very military. It also looks the right part. In fact, the rifle over here has an original Molot group in it, and is basically the same. The handguards are US made, but again, they have the stainless steel heat shield. They are made the Molot pattern, and the muzzle nut is US made. Everything else is Russian, including the clubfoot buttstock, receiver, 23¼ inch chrome lined cold hammer forged barrel, the entire bolt group including piston, bipod, so on and so forth. And they come with a Bulgarian mag, and if you happen to have a Russian 40 round RPKM mag, it would be perfectly fine to use in here, as well as drums, anything. You could even put wood furniture on this and have a pretty cool looking gun. In fact, I have a spare set. The only problem is the Russian wood isn't inlet for the scope rail, so you either have to have a stock that doesn't fold fully, or you could just make a small inlet in your wood and there you'd have it. Again, mostly just covering this for completeness' sake. These are on the market now. They're extremely high value, but once they're gone, and it is extremely, exceedingly, almost infinitesimally impossible that any more will ever come in. So they're high now, but who knows what the future will bring. Unfortunately, most people will probably just buy these and keep them in the box, which is a shame. These are overbuilt, even with quite a bit of use, since this was built to be a light machine gun. You're not going to wear it out. Even if you did break a few minor parts, these are pretty much standard parts compatible. For example, the fire control group, small pins and springs. The thing is, there's just not a lot to break on an AK or an RPK. But my point is, I would shoot it. In my humble opinion, there's really no reason to own something if you don't take it out and enjoy it. And that goes doubly true for unique collectibles. And the truth of the matter is, with the truly rare, the truly collectible guns, you don't devalue them significantly by running a few rounds through them and taking care of them. You really don't. There's such a small number of these in the USA that the desirability will be there. And this is the only 7.62-39 Russian RPK to be imported. Ironically, there are probably even fewer RPKS builds in the US than even these, because there's probably, one, maybe 200 of these that FIME will eventually sell. These, who knows? But the difference is, this is still a kit build. While I think it's a nice one, it's not a factory gun, and you have to keep that. Different strokes, but for a lot of us, there's just no substitute for an authentic, true import. And these have all the right features of an RPKM. It's worth pointing out that there are no major military users of these. Russia today still heavily relies on the RPK-74M. They even have not officially declared the original RPK-74 obsolete, and even some RPK and RPKS's are still in kind of second line Russian service. Again, these guns were built to last, and the fact that they survived decades in the Red Army and now modern Russian Army is a testament to that. But I'm known for my love of all things RPK. Probably should just start an RPK playlist dedicated just to that. What do you think? But I thought it'd be interesting to compare the most recent 7.6239 from Molot versus one of the older ones. And I even have a video comparing a first-year production kit build, also from Legion, but it's a fixed stalker, and I thought comparing folders would be more appropriate this go round. Again, there's not as many changes as you see between the AKM and the AK-74M, but Molot has been remarkably consistent over the 50 plus years they've been building. Heck, I guess nearly 60 years now, because the first guns came out in 1961. But that's what they're well known for, are making machine guns, and they do a very good job. And the sanctions, they happened over 2.5 years ago. It's still very sad, because they made some of the best imports we've really ever seen. It's one of those situations, guys. It was good while it lasted, but it's over now. If you have any questions about the Molot VEPR, Jay and I will do our best to answer them, or if we can't answer, at least give you some direction. Again, sorry, we really don't know numbers. FIME, Arsenal has always been very tight-lipped about that, but it's not going to be very many. In fact, if anything, I'd say fewer 7.6239s will be available ultimately than 5.45. As far as the older VEPR 1V from IO, Royal Tiger, again, we don't know real numbers, but it seems like it was not, again, very high, probably somewhere between 800 and 1,500. But that's just best guessing. Alrighty, folks. Appreciate you tuning in. Feel free to comment below. And if you would like to help support the channel, please check out the link to our Patreon page. This is Misha, and also on behalf of Jay, we will both catch you very soon next time.